What is going on, ladies and gents? This is George Bean, and I have just recently gotten to see the new film from director Martin Scorsese, that being The Irishman, or titled on screen as I Heard You Paint Houses, which stars Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, and Joe Pesci. As it should be noted for its synopsis, this film is based on the true story of Frank Sheeran, a truck driver and World War II veteran who, starting in the 1950s, became involved as a mob hitman for the Buffalino crime family, and, according to his 2003 deathbed confession, his alleged involvement in the disappearance and likely murder of former Teamster Union leader Jimmy Hoffa in 1975. As it should be noted to you, ladies and gents, for the phrase, I heard you paint houses, is meant as a subtle way by the mob of saying, I heard you kill people, as in painting the house's walls with people's blood when killing them. And in addition, if you have seen the movie and noticed how when the film opens with its opening credits, it instead goes by the title, I Heard You Paint Houses. That's because that was the original title for the 2004 book upon which this film is adapted from. I guess we could say that the Irishman title it was for simple cinematic advertising reasons, and in the film itself, the book's title was meant as a reminder of its source material. And one other thing to note, this film is the ninth collaboration between Scorsese and De Niro, their previous time being 24 years ago in Casino. It is also the fourth collaboration between De Niro and Al Pacino, the others being The Godfather Part 2, Heat, and Righteous Kill. And it is the very first collaboration between Scorsese and Al Pacino. Now, I should mention to you, ladies and gents, is that I am a really huge loving fan of Goodfellas and Casino. I practically grew up watching Goodfellas ever since I had left the cradle, and I've watched it at least more than 100 times even to this very day. I have even grew up to love Casino just as much as well. So yes, Goodfellas and Casino, I consider them to be my all-time favorite mob crime movies out there. So there shouldn't be no surprise to say if I said that I was really excited for The Irishman. It's been a movie I have been dying to see for years. And now, finally, I had just gotten to watch The Irishman on Netflix. It is actually my very first time trying out Netflix in all my life. And this movie was kind of like my gateway into that site. And I gotta say, it worked out very well for me trying Netflix. Now I might start trying out Netflix more often nowadays. To put it bluntly, I had really enjoyed this movie the first time watching it, too. The Irishman may actually be yet another winner from Scorsese in recent years. I also consider it to be a return to form for Scorsese, especially for his work on Goodfellas and Casino. It is another wonderfully told mob crime epic that explores a particular rank of the mafia at its prime during the mid-20th century. But in this case, it happens to focus on a low-ranking hitman employed by the Buffalino family in Philadelphia and had ties to the Teamsters Union, especially to Jimmy Hoffa. And that this film is being told from a much older perspective, narrated by an 80-year-old Frank recounting his life story. sort of like in Titanic and Young Guns and all those other movies. And also, much like Goodfellas and Casino, this film is also based on the true story, but it takes certain liberties, mostly for cinematic purposes. But while it may not exactly be historically accurate to what might have actually happened, depending on what stories or news you might have heard of this thing. But ultimately, that doesn't matter, as The Irishman is still yet another amazing cinematic masterpiece on the mob crime that, for me, could rightfully sit up there alongside Goodfellas and Casino. The For the cast, Robert De Niro is still great as always. The he shows that he is still a powerhouse actor who can hold his own even at an old age, and one of the best actors out there. But I believe it is real. I like how it shows in this role his character as his character Frank. He shows a different side of Frank, someone who's looking at things as a much older man and sees how it alienates himself from his own family, especially from his own daughter Peggy. Who knows what kind of man he really is? But it is really Al Pacino who probably, to me, has the best performance in this film in his role as Jimmy Hoffa. Pacino is on fire once again proving that he is still a great actor that could rival even De Niro's caliber. And wow, I'm sure what I love is when De Niro narrates about Jimmy Hoffa when we are introduced to him. He says the young people nowadays, they don't know who Jimmy Hoffa is. He's referring to my generation, how time passes and none of us, the generation that I come from, probably don't even know who Jimmy Hoffa is, aside from his disappearance. So, I do kind of hope this movie acts as a gateway to know the things about Jimmy Hoffa and the things he gone through. But it's good to see Joe Pesci back. He was amazing as Russell Buffalino. Here he is much more subdued in this film than he was as Tommy in Goodfellas or Nicky in Casino. Whilst those characters were more like hot-headed psychopaths, his role as Russell in this is more older and wiser, so that like someone who is up in the high ranks in the mob, like the maid boss of a crime family. So and even like those two characters he played in Goodfellas and Casino, Joe Pesci plays a character that you do not want to mess with at all. And yes, they do use the de-aging process in this film, in which an actor's face could be de-aged to make him appear as young as 30 years, something which had been used since as far back as Tron Legacy in 2010, in which Jeff Bridges was de-aged to appear as a younger Clue in that film. In this film, De Niro has been de-aged to appear as young as his early 30s in the 1950s, and progress up until almost close to his death at 83 in 2003. I will say that the de-aging on his face did initially catch my eye at first, but as the film progressed, I had ended up forgetting about it because I was becoming more glued into the film, that the de-aged face left my attention and I was no longer being distracted by it. And as the film progressed further and more time passed in its timeline, the de-aging does lessen up when De Niro starts to appear more older. So if I had to say so, it's that the de-aging effects in this film isn't as distracting thing or bothersome as it was in Tron Legacy, or hell, even Gemini Man earlier this year. Although there are some things in this film that might spur up some complaints from viewers. The main one being its very lengthy running time. This film is 3 hours and 30 minutes long. So yeah, might want to make sure to use the bathroom before starting this movie. Buckle up to your couch for a while, and do not drink soda. Drink anything else: water, iced tea, apple juice, beer, anything but Coca-Cola or Pepsi, because you might likely want to go to the bathroom during the middle of the movie. And this film is kind of very different in comparison to, say, Goodfellas or even Casino. Those movies were much more fast-paced and energetic in a lot of ways. But this film is very slow-paced. It's not as energetic as Goodfellas. And also, the story does sometimes feel a bit thin. It's mostly just a group of very old people having conversations during, like, a dinner table or something like that. I mean, it must be the reason as to why Netflix ended up distributing this film and not by a major Hollywood studio. You see, what happened was that Paramount Pictures was originally supposed to distribute this film, but it ultimately dropped out in February 2017, citing the climbing budget as the reason. But then Netflix came in and bought the film for $105 million, and it also agreed to finance the film's $125 million budget. In the end, it ended up costing $159 million, mostly due to the de-aging effects. But as far as I am concerned, had they actually did release this film widely in theaters, I'm willing to bet this film would have bombed at the box office. Most likely due to its very lengthy running time and slow-paced story, but also the fact that it had ended up costing $159 million to make. So yeah, I believe this film would have been a box office bomb for Paramount. Not something they'd actually want on their hands now in this time when they're experiencing flops. Although as far as I am concerned, the first time watching this film, and even the second time viewing it, for a movie that's 3.5 hours long, it didn't particularly feel that way to me. I felt, it actually felt like it had went by smoothly and efficiently. Very much like, how Casino had told its story, so smoothly, despite its 3-hour length. And hey, if I could be able to sit through the extended director's cut of JFK and Apocalypse Now, both of which had the exact same runtime lengths, then I could take something like The Irishman. I don't want to really spoil much in this film, but I will say that the final 40 minutes of this film basically focuses on the mobsters' lives at the crime. How when they are finally caught by the feds, Frank and his mob bosses, like Russell Buffalino and Fat Tony, end up being sent to prison, and while Russell and others end up dying due to natural causes or health reasons in prison, Frank ends up living out his remaining life in a retirement home in a wheelchair up until his death at age 83 in 2003. It's actually kind of sad to see these big mob bosses kind of fall apart and die from old age as they sit in prison. But yeah, I like that. To get to show the full epilogue of life after crime for these mob bosses, when old age finally catches up to them. And one final thing I wanted to say is that having grown up on Goodfellas and Casino, I now have a pretty good understanding of how in the mob, killing is commonplace. How giving the order for a hit is said in a very subtle manner. So when watching this, I actually didn't have to guess when a hit was gonna happen or when someone's car was gonna get blown up. There was like seeing 3 car bombings, and then when it seemed like it's gonna be the third one, I gasped, waiting if it's gonna happen, and then it turns out it does, and it was like, but that shows how prepared I am when watching these kinds of films, of know when to expect the mob hit. That kind of like a. So yeah, that was amazing, and there was also one other mob hit that I wish wouldn't happen, but of course, turns out that it's the way it is, and that it was gonna happen anyway, and that's what it was like during those times, when the mob ran things in the 20th century. Your killers come with your smiles, they come as your friends, and this movie does that very well. So yeah, if I had to give The Irishman a rating right now, for now, as a quickie review, I'd give it at least 8.5 stars out of 10. Because despite its lengthy runtime and somewhat slow pacing, it is still a wonderfully filmed for the true die-hard cinema buffs like me to watch. And if you are a huge Scorsese fan, or especially a fan of Goodfellas, then this film might just be worth your watch. And I'm sure what y'all are gonna say, 8.5 seems pretty high. Yes, it does. But really, in comparison to the much higher ratings I intend to give to Goodfellas and Casino in the future, I'd say The Irishman should consider itself lucky that I am giving it that kind of rating. So thank you for watching, ladies and gents. And what did you think of The Irishman? Please leave a comment about your opinion in the comment section below the video, and I will happily read it for you. So thanks for watching, and until then, I will see you all next time. Peace out, y'all. And remember, go home and get your fucking shine box.